This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
Stroz, I've become a TikTok addict, and we're going to need to get into that. But we also have a lot to talk about with the Lions. I think officially the season's been put to bed after the loss to the Packers. We're going to get into what I saw last week. What was that?
It sure as shit should be.
Well, if they won that game, their playoff odds jumped to nearly 30%. They didn't win that game, but they made it a good game, and we're going to get into that. I've only watched one game under Bevel, but between the game I watched and the result of the game I was unable to watch, I'm convinced that this team is better than they looked under Matt Patricia. They're maybe not quite as far away as we think. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to me being a TikTok addict. But first, some literal nobody, I've never heard of, made a comment, I guess, on a Cleveland radio station about Chad Brown. Or no, that's not Cleveland, it's Denver. Chad Brown said on 104.3 The Fan in Denver that he's hearing the Lions are going to move on from Matthew Stafford. Now, I don't take that tweet to mean anything, Stroz. I mean, there's no GM in place. I don't know what Chad Brown of Denver is hearing, but I don't think it's very important. But when I saw that tweet, what was interesting is the list of people who want their team to bring in Matthew Stafford. You go to the quote tweets. First comment, Dear John Lynch, go get Matthew Stafford. That's San Francisco, right? 2 comments down. Patriots, do it. Kyle Shanahan, go get him. John Lynch, go get him. There's more than that. But you look and it's just like Colts, go get him. A bunch of Niners. Someone thinks the Saints should bring him in. And these are all people who want them to bring him into their team. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because I don't think he's looked great this year, and it's opened me up to moving on from him. And I'm still very open to moving on. But I wonder when we see these tweets and you see these messages, are we maybe overreacting to the season that Matt Stafford's had? Are we undervaluing him? Like, could he still fetch quite the haul after what has been one of his less impressive seasons of the last 5 or 6 years?
I don't think so. I think if you look at those teams that you rattled off, right? 49ers, the Saints, the Patriots, I believe most of those teams are basically a quarterback away from really competing.
The Colts was another one on the list.
The Colts are a perfect example. Colts probably make the most sense. I don't know what's going on with Phillip Rivers this year, if he's going to stay after the season
or
not.
Someone says Bears.
I mean, these are all teams that are basically that piece away. The Detroit Lions are not that piece away. That's why I think it makes complete sense for this team to move on from him. If you're able to trade him and get something back of value for your new general manager, whomever that is, I think it's ideal that you move on and you trade him away and get something back, because those teams are all basically a quarterback away from really contending for a playoff spot or contending in the playoffs.
So I think maybe you misunderstand what I'm asking, because I'm not trying to convince you that these people wanting Matthew Stafford means you shouldn't move him. Mm-hmm. I think that there's this mindset that the market for a quarterback today may not be what it's always been, because the list of good quarterbacks in today's league, I think, is longer than it's been in a long time. And you got a Trevor Lawrence coming out in the draft. You got a Justin Fields. You got a Trey Lance. You got a Mac Jones. Like, it's possible 5 quarterbacks could go in the first round this year. So there's this belief that somebody like Stafford, who I believe will be on either the last or, you know what? No, I think he has 3 years left after this, but he has a very easy out after next year in terms of dead cap. But I think there's this belief that a quarterback like Stafford's not going to fetch a lot. Like, we've talked about what we'd be willing to trade him for. And my stance was anything less than 2 firsts going into the season wasn't enough. And I stepped back off of that a little bit. But I see these list of teams. And, like, if you're San Francisco, does it make sense to hope somebody falls? Or even to try and go up and get one? If you're New Orleans and Breeze is gone, and we don't know that Breeze is gone, but let's be real, he does not look like the same player this year. Bringing him back would be risky. If you're these teams that you're talking about that are a quarterback away, I don't know, man. I think there's a case to be made. You should be still expecting a king's ransom for Matthew Stafford.
I mean, I think that you should, again, Me and you are in a little bit of a different spot where we were at the beginning of the year. Especially your expectations were much more than mine. I wanted a first-round pick. You wanted 2 first-round picks, and you weren't willing.
Nothing from a team like the teams that are going to trade for Matthew Stafford are going to be late firsts. DeForest Buckner was traded for a first-round draft pick. Great defensive end, still a defensive end.
I don't know how you package and sell him, though, right? But my issue is this is a guy who has been injured. Like, there's no guarantee he's playing this week. He might miss the end of the season with rib cartilage injury. The previous 2 years, he's been really banged up. He's a quarterback who you're getting diminishing returns. I'm not sure who wants to give you much more than that.
God,
I'm willing to take a first if you want him.
He's been banged up the last 2 years, but he played every game 2 years ago. Like, it's not. I know he was hurt, but like, dude. Last year was the first time he missed time since 2010. I'm not saying injuries aren't a part of the picture, but to write him off and treat it like injuries are like a major concern, I think is overblown.
I don't know how you can't, though. I mean, a season ago, he didn't finish the season. This year, there's a possibility he might not finish the season. He down the stretch here, he is going out the same way he came into his NFL career.
This is so ridiculous.
Constantly banged up and beat up.
The way the conversation's going. This is not where I expected this to go, but this is ridiculous. You know what people said after his first 2 years in his league? The guy would never stay healthy.
Right.
Like,
and you know what? He's a tough SOB. He is a tough SOB. And the guy plays through a ton. Plays through a ton. But at this point, he hasn't been able to get on the field and stay on the field regularly. And you can't tell me otherwise.
I mean, what are you talking about? He played 13 games, missing 3 games. If he misses every single game the rest of the season, missing 3 games in the NFL is pretty much a non-factor because everybody gets freaking hurt. It's not. Drew Brees is missing time this year. You know what? Who else? He missed time last year. Missing 3 games does not count as an injury concern. Now, yes, he missed 8 games last year. The first time he missed games in 10 years. And let's be clear here. I'm not saying he could have gotten back on the field, but we both know there was no incentive for him to get back on the field last year. We are using the most ridiculous sample size to create this dramatic injury history. It is a factor. If you are considering trading for Matthew Stafford, you go, okay, injuries are starting to become a part of the picture, but he played 10 straight years. He's in his early 30s, not his late 30s. And still, at the most this year, he's going to miss 3 games. At the absolute most.
But again, this goes back to what are you willing to part with to get him? Okay? This goes back to your original argument. Are you willing to give 2 first-round picks for a quarterback who has shown some durability issues? I mean, all I'm asking you, like, don't huff and puff. Don't get pissed off. Are you willing to part with 2 first-round picks for a guy who has shown durability issues and who is on the backside of his career? Yes or no?
Yes. That's my point. If you're San Francisco,
great.
It's Mullins?
No, I don't want Nick Mullins. But you've got to. So for San Francisco, it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense because you've got Jimmy Garoppolo. You already have a quarterback. No, you already have a quarterback with a massive cap number. So you're going to bring in another quarterback with a massive cap number?
Well, the other option is you don't win football games.
So great. Go ahead, John Lynch. Try to bring in Matthew Stafford, trade away a couple first-round picks, and now you've got 2 quarterbacks that are eating up roughly 25% of your salary cap. Good luck navigating that. I think for a team like New Orleans, it makes sense because Drew Brees is at the end of his career. And unless you're going with Taysom Hill or Jameis Winston all of a sudden figures out how to be a quarterback, I think Matt Stafford to New Orleans makes a ton of sense. Okay? But New Orleans has to be willing to give you what, in your case, you're asking for. You're asking for 2 first-round picks. I don't know if you get that for him.
And
that's what the argument is.
Not 2 first-round picks. What I'm here to tell you is when you look at the list of people who want Matthew Stafford to be their quarterback, is that 1 first-round pick isn't enough. And I had shifted a little bit to your direction because it felt like the quarterbacks in the league are so good right now. But when you look at the list of guys, durability concerns. Ben Roethlisberger has durability concerns because he's old as fuck. Mm-hmm. Drew Brees has durability concerns. He's not even good anymore. San Francisco doesn't have a quarterback. Phillip Rivers, to be fair, has been a lot better this year than I'd have ever anticipated. He's 40. And at his peak, he's whatever. He's fine. Mm-hmm. He's quarterback 7.
There is a the same quarterback
who won't get Trevor Lawrence and they won't get Justin Fields.
Correct.
And so unless they would rather go into the season with maybe a Trey Lance if they're lucky, maybe a Mac Jones if they're lucky, then they have to figure out what the hell they want to do if they want to be serious contenders. Honestly, I think the Steelers are a great example. Steelers have been incredible this year, right? Well, all of a sudden, things are starting to look a little bit more questionable there. And Stroz, where would you rank the Steelers' chances of getting out of the AFC right now? How many teams would you put above them? Because I'd put at least 2, maybe 3.
I'd probably put 2 or 3 as well.
And that's a team that started the season 11-0.
Mm-hmm.
So Ben Roethlisberger, and he is absolutely a part of it. That is not the same Ben Roethlisberger we watched most of his career.
Okay, but here's the thing. I think the Steelers' issues are a little bit different, though. It's not necessarily Ben so much. That run game is not great
anymore.
No, I get it. He's an older quarterback. I understand. They were looking to move on from him 2 years ago. So I think Matthew Stafford to Pittsburgh makes a ton of sense. And I think Matthew Stafford to Pittsburgh helps reinvigorate that organization and makes them better. I don't know if they're willing to give you a king's ransom here, though. All right. The issue with that team right now is their run game. Their run game is ranked dead last in the NFL, and that puts a ton of pressure on your quarterback who has to throw 52 times.
It doesn't matter. Matthew Stafford's never had a good running game. Give him a defense and watch what happens.
I'm aware. Again, I think it makes perfect sense for a guy like Matthew Stafford to go to Pittsburgh.
They traded a first-round draft pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick. They can't trade more than that for a quarterback?
But he's a younger player.
But
that's a younger player.
Quarterback.
You're right. It's not a quarterback, but you're trading for a quarterback who is approaching the twilight of his career.
How much longer do you think Matthew Stafford has as a starting NFL quarterback?
I would say maybe 4 or 5 years.
Because I think that's conservative.
You think he could play another 7 or 8 years? I don't know. I don't know.
It's impossible. No,
I don't think it's impossible either. But I don't know physically if he could hold up to it. I'm trying to be as real as possible with you here. I think 4 to 5 years playing good football, I think is about as long as he has left.
Sure, I'm sure he declines in the back end of that, like Phillip Rivers is doing, like Ben Roethlisberger is doing, like Tom Brady's doing, like Aaron Rodgers had been doing prior to whatever the hell this year is.
He's got the magic elixir.
But 4 or 5 years of high-end quarterback play is worth a lot more than a first-round draft pick when you're a contender. That's all I'm saying. And I understand that he missed 8 games last year, but it is an overreaction to act like this is somebody who you don't expect to be on the field anymore. What's the
least you'll take for Matt Stafford? If there was a general manager who came to you and said, "Hey, I want Matt Stafford. What are you asking for? What's the least you would take for him right now?"
Well, I think that. So here's what's tough about that. I'm willing to take a lot less if I know I get a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I'm really personally only interested in 3. And that's Trevor Lawrence you won't get. Justin Fields probably won't get. I mean, there's a scenario they could still pick as high as 4. So if somebody else fell in love with one of the other quarterbacks, it's not impossible. And then Trey Lance. And to be honest, I have hesitations about Trey Lance.
Trey Lance is a South Dakota quarterback, right?
Yeah, I thought it was North Dakota, but
North Dakota. Yeah, North Dakota. Yes, North Dakota. Sorry, I get the Dakotas mixed up. Trey Lance. But here's the thing: Trey Lance might be a guy who will maybe slip later in the draft because he's only played 1 game this year. He hasn't really played any competition. There's some question marks there.
He might slip in the draft.
Right.
I mean, I remember having the conversation about how Kyler Murray was going to be a day 3 draft pick, and I remember telling people, "Stop it." Trey Lance might fall in the draft, but I think there's a case to be made. Him only playing 1 game helped him.
Jalen Hurts is another guy who was supposed to go 4th, 5th round, in Philly ended up coming and scooping him up quick. So
I would be blown away if Trey Lance isn't a top. First of all, he's going to be a first-round draft pick. I would be that seems like a given to me. I think he's probably a top 10 draft pick. Now the Lions probably still pick there. So if they get one of those 3 guys, I'm open to the idea of moving on from Stafford for less. But if you don't have one of those 3 and you're going to subject me to a year of what would basically be trash, it would be a tanking season. And by the way, that's out of play. They won't trade Matthew Stafford if they don't think they have a replacement plan.
Right.
But in that imaginary world, I'd want 2 firsts. If I had to sit through a year of a trash transition quarterback, even a Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I appreciate, I wouldn't take less than 2 firsts. If you got
Chase Daniels, make him run that contract.
He's under contract another year, isn't he?
2 more.
No one's ever gone into the season with him as their planned starter, but he has been a high-end backup his entire career. I don't think a transition quarterback is even in play.
Mm-hmm.
But given they take somebody, I still think I want a first and a second. I understand that Minkah Fitzpatrick's young and he's a core part of the future of your defense, but he's still a part of your defense. Matthew Stafford on a team like Pittsburgh, who has an elite defense, a ridiculous receiving core, That's a scary team. I understand Jimmy Garoppolo makes a lot of money. I don't know what his contract looks like. A lot of times guys have outs. They might be able to get out from under that. That team, I'm sorry, I know they made the Super Bowl last year. I don't view them as favorites. Are they in contention? Sure. Getting a quarterback like Matthew Stafford changes that conversation. They become probably far and away the best team in the NFC. When they're healthy, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I think because that defense is so fierce, and I think what they do with that run game, and on top of that, the head coach is an offensive genius. I think it really does. It would help put them near the top, at least of the NFC, to be a lethal contender. I'm looking for Jimmy Garoppolo's contract right now, so we can kind of discuss. As far as Matt Stafford goes, Matt Stafford has, like you said, 3 years left. His last year, it's this restructured deal where it's all bonus money. He's not really earning a contract.
He has a big, it's very common for guys to have years that are designed as reasonable times to cut them if needed. Mm-hmm. Matthew Stafford is after next year. I think it's less about cutting him and more about the ability to trade him for somebody else. All I came here to say is if you've soured on what you think the value is for Matthew Stafford, there are a list of teams who are going to be in the playoffs this year, or who the only reason they won't be is because of injury, San Francisco, who would be in a significantly better place with Matthew Stafford at quarterback moving forward. And that doesn't even just mean this year. Maybe Ben, while I don't think he's anything special anymore, I don't even think he's that good anymore. He's good enough that they're going to be a playoff team. His window's disappearing. Drew Brees, same situation. His window is disappearing. Those teams, maybe next year isn't necessarily when the move is for, but we agree that 4 to 5 years of good quarterback play is left. There's a lot of teams who could justify 2 first-round draft picks for that.
Okay, so this is how San Francisco could make this work. So Jimmy Garoppolo, the dead cap money is crazy this year. It's 28.6 for dead cap money. Next year, it's $2.8 million, which is a pittance.
Nothing.
Which is nothing. But the cap hit is $26,400,000. That's where it gets a little sketch. But the dead cap money is absolutely nothing. Whereas Matt Stafford's contract, his cap hit next year, $24,850,000. That's the dead cap. His cap hit is almost $35 million, though. So I'm not sure how. I mean, look, John Lynch would have to be able to pull some kind of wizardry out of a baseball hat to make this work with both those quarterbacks. I think that's a dynamic quarterbacking duo, and I think that quarterback room looks pretty decent if you got both those guys. But I don't know how you make that work.
You could make it work. I'm not telling you it'd be easy, but the way that with restructuring contracts in the NFL, if you went in knowing that this was the last year of Jimmy Garoppolo, that they could make it work. The more likely scenario, to be fair, and should he be traded to San Francisco, it probably is a year down the road.
Yeah.
But I don't think it makes sense to take less right now because you have maybe one less suitor. Matthew Stafford is a franchise-changing quarterback for a team who there are several contenders right now who are paying for a high-end quarterback that don't really have one. And I believe Matthew Stafford can still be that for the right team. And by the way, I'm going to get into that because I didn't watch against Chicago. I had heard he looked a lot better against Chicago. I thought he looked damn good against Green Bay. Missed on a couple of deep ones. But aside from that, I thought he looked very good.
But let's do this real quick. So I'm looking at the playoffs right now, okay? So starting in the AFC, Kansas City, obviously no. Pittsburgh, we both agree that he could possibly go there and make a difference. Buffalo, I think they figured out the quarterback with Josh Allen. Tennessee Titans, I think they're set on Ryan Tannehill. Cleveland Browns, I love Baker. You love Baker, I think.
I don't know. I mean, I like Baker's personality. I don't think Baker is anywhere near as good as Matthew Stafford. That being said, I think Baker is a god in Cleveland because
I think so too.
They haven't had a quarterback who was even mediocre in 30 years.
I agree with you 100%. So we both agree Indianapolis could be a perfect spot for him to land.
Yep.
Miami Dolphins, obviously not. Baltimore, no. The Las Vegas Raiders.
Derek Carr's been really good this year.
He has, but I think the last 5 games he's been a little bit inconsistent.
He's had one of the wildest careers because 2 or 3 years ago he was like putting up MVP type numbers. Then he was so bad people were talking about, is he even the quarterback this year?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't rule it out. That seems more like a wait and see, maybe one more year kind of situation.
And then after that, the New England Patriots, I think we both agree it would make some sense. And then
are they in the playoffs right now?
They're the 10th team. So like they need to win this week to kind of stay in contention. And then you've got Denver, who's the 11th.
Absolutely. Drew Lock. I mean, I don't think they'd pull a trigger on Drew Lock yet, but he doesn't look good enough.
Yeah, I don't see this. That's a problem with Denver, right? I could see him going there and making a difference, but I don't think they pull the trigger because I think they're a little bit too invested in Drew Lock. After that, it's everybody who's been eliminated, and Houston's out of the picture. The Chargers are out of the picture. Bengals are out of the picture. Jacksonville's a spot, but again, you've got a shot at a top end quarterback coming up in this draft. So I don't know if you do it. And the Jets, same deal. The
only reason you do it if you're Jacksonville is you believe you have a decent team right now, and you don't believe in any of the quarterbacks at the top. If you wanted to use that pick on a different direction, because you wouldn't trade 2 for Stafford. They'd have to be trading future firsts.
So let's switch over to the NFC. So Green Bay, no. New Orleans Saints, maybe. Yes. The Rams, no. The Washington football team. This is a team that never gets discussed with this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can see that. Absolutely.
They're going to be out of quarterback range. Actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, I'd be curious to know how they feel about Alex Smith because he looks like a decent short-term option, but their defense is good. It's not like good for a bad football team. Their defense is good.
Defense is really good. They've got a lot of pieces. They've got a decent running back who's a rookie. They've got some good young wide receivers.
Stroz, I think if they had Stafford this year, they would be a real playoff team.
Absolutely. I could see them being right there in range of the New Orleans Saints, nipping on their heels if they had a good quarterback. They figured everything out earlier. Seattle, obviously not. Tampa Bay, you've got Brady, I think, on one more year?
I don't think you can bring in Brady's replacement plan, who's 30-plus years old.
I don't think you can either, but it's a weird spot. Arizona, no. Minnesota, no. Chicago, I don't know if you trade within the division.
What's Kirk Cousins' contract look like?
I don't know. I can pull it up real quick.
I don't know what they feel like about him. I don't think Minnesota makes sense, but it's interesting.
Yeah, I see. They're a weird team because the same thing, right? I don't think they make sense, but
I don't know. If
I feel like Matt Stafford's a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins, right?
I think he is, but I don't know if it's a big enough upgrade to make that kind of a move.
Exactly. So here's Kirk Cousins' contract, and Kirk Cousins paid crazy amount of money. Kirk Cousins he's basically in that same setup as Garoppolo and Stafford, where he doesn't become an unrestricted free agent until 2023. His dead cap number is absolutely insane.
It's all guaranteed.
Yeah.
So it's not possible. They're tied to him through 2023.
Exactly. It's nuts. His cap hits like 31 mil. His dead cap is 41 mil. It's absolutely nuts. So there's no way to move on from Kirk Cousins. After that, again, Chicago. I think Chicago makes sense, but I don't know if you trade within the division. After that, the 49ers.
For who? The Bears or the Lions?
I don't know if you trade within the division. I think it makes sense for the Bears to go get Matt Stafford.
If you're the Lions and you're trading Stafford, you're saying we are rebuilding, we are restarting. I absolutely would trade in the division. And I understand where you're coming from. Conventional wisdom says you don't trade in the division. But if they're willing to give you 2 first-round draft picks and no one else is, go ahead. Take my 32-year-old quarterback. And you haven't had a first-round draft pick in 2 years. I'm going to double that. I'm going to make it 4 straight years without a first-round draft pick.
It'd be interesting to see if that scenario.
That window couldn't last. I don't believe you can sustain a championship run in the NFL without ever having first-round draft picks.
Well, no, because what about New England? New England relatively drafts late in the first round, and they usually end up trading the first-round picks and moving back into the second round to get more picks.
That's not the same because they're turning the first into other assets.
That's true. But again, they don't have first-round picks.
I mean, yeah, if you want to deal with semantics, the semantics of what I said wasn't accurate, but the meaning was.
All right, let's move on. 49ers, we've already discussed. Giants, I mean, depending on what you believe in Daniel Jones.
I think he's similar to Drew Lock. I think they probably give him another year, but I don't think he's proven enough yet.
The Philadelphia Eagles look like they might find their quarterback with Jalen Hurts. Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys. This is a team that always gets talked about with Matt Stafford.
Well, the question there is he going to be under contract? And I think the answer is yes. I think
so too.
I think their offense has been so unbelievably bad without Dak Prescott. I don't see how he gained so much leverage by this injury.
Mm-hmm. Then you have the Atlanta Falcons, depending on what they're doing with Matt Ryan. But I think Matt Stafford are the same quarterback. Carolina Panthers.
Nah.
I don't think so either. So that's interesting. I think it makes probably the most sense for the Washington football team.
Washington's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. That's a team
I've
nobody's
not heard a
talked
single
about.
person bring up Washington.
Yep.
And it's funny
crazy.
because we didn't. There was no debate there.
No,
we
both looked at each other like, yeah,
that's
sense.
interesting. All right, well, let's move on. We will get back into the Lions. Like I said, I thought they looked better this versus the Packers than honestly maybe all year. But first, I'm addicted to TikTok, and I'm guessing most of our audience probably doesn't use TikTok. How familiar are you with it?
I'm not. So my girlfriend sent me a video once from TikTok, and that was about it. I have little to no experience with it. I know a little bit about it because I work with a very young staff that talks about it. So hearing about it, kind of knowing what it does and what it's used for, they had to explain it to me. But as far as utilizing it, I've never used it.
Well, so I think I've mentioned probably on here that I've thought about doing some video game streaming as like a creative outlet. And I haven't been streaming, but I have been recording and making videos. And it has face cam, what you see when you look at me when we talk here. I have that in the on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I just make 1-minute videos. I post one a day to TikTok. I've enjoyed watching TikTok, and I think it has a really great gaming. It's a great spot for gaming. 1-minute clips are perfect to show some personality, something funny, something happening fun in the game, some rage, just lots of different things. But I started I don't know, maybe a little under a week ago, and it's just instantly, it's impressive, right? So my first video, no followers, nobody knows me on TikTok. First video gets 230 views. Honestly, I don't get 230 views on Twitter where I have 750 followers.
Right.
Second video, 400 views. Third video, 400 views. Fifth video, 600 views. It's like I'm growing an audience. And by the way, I've slowly gained followers too. I'm up to 15 followers right now. Maybe 4 or 5 of them know me. And it's getting exciting, to watch the views go up. And I've never really had anything quite like that where, there's the addictive side of social media where you want to go see your likes. This is a different realm, dude, because think about it. You make content too, mm-hmm. and it's exciting to know people are consuming your content.
Right.
And last night I go to bed, I have 750, which is my highest views on yesterday's video, and it's over 1,000 when I wake up this morning. And it's so I can't stop checking TikTok to see how well my videos are doing, and it makes me nervous because this week has been so much more fun, and it has given me this, struggling in this business. It can be hard at times to feel like you're not where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And
real quick, pause for one quick second. I don't think people really understand what an addictive drug radio really is, or just doing any sort of content production, because it is when you get the gratification of people consuming your content, it is awesome. But at the same time, when you're not sure if people like it or if people just don't understand it, it makes you feel like you're worthless, and it makes you question everything you do. It's crazy.
Here's what I would say is, Stroz, for a while, and I appreciate everyone who listens to this. This is a weird conversation to have on here, but let's get real and open here.
Yep.
When we started this podcast when I was still in Grand Rapids, we had a very interactive audience.
Yes.
There's no insult to anybody listening, and if you are listening, let's get that started again. At Brendan Riley _ at Adam R. Stroz. Every week we put something out, and we were constantly interacting with large groups of people. And that doesn't exist anymore. And that's fine. I have a fun time doing this. I appreciate you for listening. But I had what was definitely a collection, almost a community around this show, and an audience with this show that has kind of disappeared to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think seeing my videos grow on TikTok has given me some sense of a return to that. Yep. And to be honest, I've only gotten 2 comments. I haven't had a ton of actual interaction. But I posted a video, the one that had 600 views had 170 likes. That's awesome. A 30% clip. Yeah. So I'm getting this feedback that people like what I'm making. And it makes me nervous because I'm so reliant's the wrong word, but addicted to this this thrill of looking at my views. And I know it's not this simple. I was not honestly, it caught me off guard how quick this happened, Stroz. I know people on TikTok. I have a friend who hosts in Seattle, has 6 videos. None of them have more than 150 views. My very first one has 230, and pretty much have only gone up since. But today, I brought up this conversation yesterday. I was nervous when I brought it up yesterday. Stroz, I've seen positive growth every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I had 1,000 views yesterday. I'm sitting here like when I posted my video this morning, I keep thinking, I've thought this the whole way. I don't care if it has more views than my last one. I just don't want to have less views than the 2 videos ago. So I want to have at least like 650, 700 on this one. I posted this today's at 9 a.m. It's 4:21 p.m. here in Texas while I record this. 35 views. I had 1,000 yesterday. And I don't know the TikTok algorithm, but it makes me nervous that TikTok is, it gives you a little bit of this drug to get you in.
I got you. It's like your drug dealer. And
this is not really, I have not really, like people don't actually enjoy my stuff. It's not that, I believe my stuff is good, but I believe the reason I was getting views is because my stuff is good. And now I don't know that I believe that. And it's scary to think I got this taste of all these views on TikTok. And by the way, I'm still really motivated. When we get off this, I'm going to go right back to editing videos, which is basically the last week. All I've done when I'm not playing this game is basically edit videos of it. And I'm still pretty motivated. I'm prepared to go through a couple weeks of this, but I had gotten this sense that I had this audience again. And I don't know if I do.
Is there a way, or have you thought about this? Have you thought about setting up your own Twitch stream and pairing it with your TikTok videos?
So here's the problem. I absolutely want to Twitch stream.
Okay.
But the game I'm playing is a 10-person game.
Yeah.
And when I told people my last video like had 1,000 views, I didn't technically ever tell them about that one, but I told them one that had 600. Some of them are like getting kind of nervous. Like, I don't know if I love being on these now. When I told them I was going to record it, I don't think they anticipated this happening. And to be fair to them, I didn't think it would this quickly. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like an extra step too, right? To be like, hey guys, you're on live now. And like, let's be real. Most people probably aren't watching live, but like, maybe I don't even, maybe the answer is, and it's what I think you would do. You say, screw it. You just tell people I'm going live and that's going to be what happens when you play with me. But that's not who I am.
I see. So I guess for me, I need to understand. I want to make sure I understand. Your big fear with TikTok is that some of your numbers might have been overinflated and not accurate.
Well,
and now what you're seeing is,
I got really excited when you see like constant growth, right?
Yes.
I went from 200 to 400, saw 400 again, then I saw 600, and that video blew up with likes. Like I said, that was a 30% like ratio. And then you see 1,000, and you see this growth, and it gives you this sense that the reason people are seeing your stuff is because TikTok is recognizing that people are enjoying it and giving it to them more. And then you get 35, and you go, wait, is that not why that happened?
So you sent me a screenshot of the one with 1,000. When was that one posted? That was posted yesterday?
Yesterday at 9 a.m.
Okay. And then you sent me one. The screenshot came through roughly 24 hours after you posted it. Because you sent it to me about 9 a.m. your time, right? So yeah, I mean that would be concerning, and that would make me nervous too. Be like, is this stuff real? Do people really like my stuff? Are you able to tweet it out to your followers? And if you tweet it out to your followers,
here's the thing. I don't know if I'm fully expressing this because I'm not nervous people don't like my stuff. I believe wholeheartedly in the content I'm putting out there. I believe it's good, but I was under the impression the growth was because it was good and not because TikTok was feeding me a drug.
I got you.
And so having that pulled out from under you is tough. And believe me, like I said, I'm still pretty motivated to put effort into this. Like I had a graphic made that I'm going to start including in my videos. Like the quality of the videos is only going to get better with time. But Stroz, like you've had a taste of an audience. Mm-hmm. And it's not that I don't think people think I'm good or that these are funny or entertaining. It's that I got a taste of an audience. And I don't know if that audience is still going to be there. When I post a video tomorrow morning, are 1,000 people going to see it or are 30 people going to see it?
Was there something different about the 1,000 people viewed video compared to the one that you put out today?
No,
were you like angrier?
Better.
Because like I think in some of your videos, like you come off as being very angry or you're very vocal. And we've had this discussion before. Like when you yell, you're not necessarily angry or upset. It's just you're animated.
Are you referring to that video where I said when I yell, I'm
no.
No.
No, well, we've had this conversation on here, and like we've had this conversation off air. No, but that there was that one specific video that you sent me where you those were basically your words.
I bet you if I sent you today's video, you know what? Let's do this. There's no reason we can't do this live. We're gonna do a live reaction to my video. Does that work with you?
Yeah, that's cool. How are you going to send it to me?
I'm going to send you a link here. You may as well get credit for the view.
That's right.
By the way, I know you don't have an account, but I believe you're still allowed to like it, and I fully expect you to like it.
Okay.
I will admit, listening back to it this morning, I don't know that the sound mixing is the best. And that's the thing, too. Like, I've also spent a lot of time reading, like, what people suggest. Like, if you have a good video, should you delete it? Should you edit it and re-upload it? Like, what should you do? And a small part of me does wonder if I, like, re-edit the mix the sound here and try to
it up right now.
I do believe today's video is better than yesterday's, and it has 1,000 views less.
Sorry, I'm watching your video right now. So I think you're the purple guy. You're just opened a door, went into what looked like a kitchen.
It's a decontamination chamber.
So you're making commentary about what your thoughts are. Okay, so I'm gonna pause it right here. I will tell you this, but this is probably your best video you've done yet.
That's what I'm saying. It's a really good video, and nobody's seeing it. And the thing is, I can handle that, Stroz. This is what I expected when I started. If I uploaded my first video and it got 30 views, I'd have been fine. What's hard is when you see success immediately. Like, it's like the naturally talented athlete, right? Who starts playing football and he's really good at it and he dominates in high school, but he gets to college and everybody's naturally talented. And now he has to work his ass off to be ready to play by junior year. That's what I'm saying. Like, I was expecting 30 views when I started, and I immediately got hit with hundreds. And I'm nervous if those are going to go away. And like, no, like, I was prepared to build an audience, but then you just gave it to me.
Yeah.
And now it's hard to want to build it up after you got that taste of it.
I'll be honest. Like, that was, so you sent me, I think, about three of your videos. And I think
that's one of the best ones I have.
Yeah, I think that's one of your best videos. I thought it was funny. The way you got killed, I thought was great, and your reaction to getting killed was funny. I thought the video of it, the quality of it wasn't bad. I thought it was pretty good.
The audio mix is rough. When I'm explaining at the very beginning what I'm doing and what I'm thinking, it's a little too quiet. But you get where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I know. I totally understand.
So I now expect you to watch every video. You need to.
So now I got to download TikTok, and I have to have that on my phone.
TikTok. Create an account, follow me at Brendan Riley _ and the next couple parts are very important for the algorithm, Stroz. Watch every video start to finish at the bare minimum. If you want to watch it 3 or 4 straight times, that's even better.
Okay.
And then you need to like the video.
All of a sudden, becoming friends with you is becoming a chore.
I have expectations. It's not a chore.
Watch my videos, enjoy my content.
You're the one who gains in life here, not me. I'm sorry if I make content that's so good you have to consume it. That's not my fault.
Hey, I will tell you this much, and I will say bravo to you, because that video is much better than I think your previous 3 that you have sent me. I thought that was really, really good. So
the previous 3 sucked. Now, let's talk.
I didn't say the previous 3 sucked. I thought that one was just much better. I thought the stuff that you're giving now is much better than what. Because honestly, I think your first one was just you kind of messing around and you kind of trying different things out and just trying to play with the platform a little bit and figure some things out. And I think this one shows that you're adapting quickly to the platform and you're doing a good job.
Is I've gotten a lot better at video editing because I had done basically none of it before that first video, and I think I've gotten a lot better at simplifying things. But it's always so hard to transition back into sports after the middle segment.
Well, look. B thinks that the Lions are better than their 5-8 record, which means that B thinks that the Lions are not his early videos, or actually are not this current video, which is getting low ratings on TikTok.
This is so bad.
And he thinks they are way better and thinks they are similar to his 1,000-viewed video.
Well, I think that they're a fringe playoff team, which is where they were under Jim Schwartz constantly, where they were under Jim Caldwell constantly. And I watched that Packers game, and that was a Packers game where you didn't have Kenny Golladay, and I know he's been gone for a while, but this receiving core without Kenny Golladay is
not good.
Probably bottom 5 in the NFL. Like, I like Marvin Jones. He's a good complimentary piece. But I think Marvin Jones is like a solid number 2. And nobody else on the roster is a number 3. So you didn't even have a number 1. You had a solid number 2 and no number 3. And I thought the offense looked pretty damn good. Now, the defense is useless. The defense brings literally nothing to the table. But I think being really good on offense and really bad on defense with a good quarterback makes you a fringe playoff team. And they beat the Bears, which is something they didn't do under Patricia. They played with the Packers, which is something they didn't do under Patricia. I'm not telling you the Lions are really good, but I think most people listening to this podcast and watching the Lions weekly think there's no chance the Lions are fun next year. And I don't think that's true. I think we can go back to what we asked for earlier in this podcast, Stroz, not today, but in the previous episode. I think we can go back to watching next year, rooting for the playoffs in week 8, in week 9, in week 10. And maybe they don't make it. And maybe they make it and Stafford loses his 4th playoff game and people think it's because he's the worst quarterback of all time. But I think we're going to be able to, well, depends on the coach. You could hire another awful coach. But I think with the right coaching hire, you can watch next year with the expectation and goal of making the playoffs, especially with 7 teams making it.
Is this you standing on your pine box and saying that you want Darrell Bevell back as your head coach?
No, I mean, he's very clearly a better coach than Matt Patricia.
Yes,
that doesn't even look close to me.
I would agree with you there.
I kind of think I could tolerate it. It's not what I want. Bieniemy is the guy I want by like a mile.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you what, if it's not Bieniemy and it's not Saleh, the two I really like, I think Bevell probably compares to everybody else that I can think of.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying you can't present a name that I wouldn't like more, but like that's where I'm at. I just think, though, it's clear to me that Patricia held this team back on game day, not just on roster construction, but on game day.
And I would agree with you 100%. I think as far as roster construction goes, he set this team backwards. Like, this team I felt like was in a really good spot when he came in and took over, and I think he has basically dismantled it, and it's going to be really tough for the next head coach. I don't think this team is better than their 5-8 record. I don't think this team is a fringe playoff team. I think they do play better underneath Bevell, but I think that is a couple of things. I think, one, that's a team where they don't really have anything to lose. The season's pretty much over. I think they all kind of understand that. So you're just playing a little bit loose.
Hold on.
I think this is also a team.
Let's stop for a second. If Patricia was the coach, a 5-8 record would be explained as a team that's given up, not as a team that's playing loose. Those are the same scenarios, but you're using the storyline that fits the narrative you have here.
Is that all you wanted to add to where I was going with this?
Am I wrong? If Patricia was the coach, you'd say this team is given up.
I think you can read a lot by body language. And watching this team play the last 2 weeks, I think this team looks like it wants to play for this head coach. So that being said, yeah, I think they play loose. I think you are trying to discredit my argument by turning it into one of these ifs or this type of scenario. No, I think this team is playing loose. I think this team likes playing for this head coach. I think this team despised playing for Matt Patricia. And yeah, I think if this team was playing loose with Matt Patricia, I think this team would have given up because they didn't like Matt Patricia. I think it's clear. I think it's obvious. I think you have 2 games worth of proof of this.
I'm not arguing that they didn't like Matt Patricia or that even that they do. I'm not even trying to argue whether or not they like Bevell. I have no idea. I'm telling you that's not what's important to me. What I watch is Darrell Bevell is coaching a more modern style of football.
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Stafford was slinging the ball all over the field. They weren't.
He's a better football coach.
But like we're talking like basic shit.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about Darrell Bevell came in here and was Andy Reid.
No.
We're talking about Matt Patricia dragged this team down so far that if your coach is above average, I think next year we get to have fun. And we might get our hearts ripped out. I'm not telling you we won't. But we've talked about this on this podcast. Under Jim Schwartz and Jim Caldwell, we got to enjoy Lions football. Under Matt Patricia, how many total weeks have you enjoyed of the last 3 years?
Not
3?
A lot.
4?
Maybe 3.
I mean, this year we were both out by week 2.
Yeah. All right, so here, let's do this. Let's look at what you have to build around with this team.
Here's what I want to say real quick. We can do that in a second. They're 5-8 this year, right now. They're probably going to finish 5-11. I'm not telling you they're going to finish 11-5. I'm telling you that 8 losses is probably the ballpark that you need to be thinking about next year. Not 8 through 13 weeks, 8 total.
All right, so this team, we've already kind of expressed where we feel the quarterback sits on this roster. I think we're both okay.
He's back, by the way. I'm not saying I want him to be, but I'm acting as though he will be back.
Yeah, I mean, unless you get somebody who's willing to give you something crazy, I think he's probably back as well. But running back, you've been hypercritical of the running back position because of the investment that's been made with a ton of second-round draft picks.
It doesn't mean I think DeAndre Swift is a bad player, though. from what I've seen, he looks like a fine player.
Okay. So DeAndre Swift is a piece to build around. Kerryon Johnson, yes or no? Build around him?
I'm not building around running backs, period. I think the running back room is competent.
Okay. Wide receivers. Kenny Galladay's probably the only guy, if you can bring him back next year, if he wants to be back next year.
But there's so much that needs to happen, Stroz. What I'm saying is, let's assume Matthew Stafford's back. You have a really good quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Your offensive line, maybe not great, but I think your offensive line is as good as it's ever been in Matthew Stafford's career. Is that fair?
Yes.
I mean, we've rewatched half of it,
yes.
which is definitely better than any of that.
Definitely.
On defense, I don't believe you have a lot.
You don't.
But I think Matt Stafford, an offensive line, a competent running game. I think receiver, and I could be wrong, I think receiver will be a priority of this offseason. It is a very, very strong wide receiver free agency class. I don't know if the Lions will bring back Golladay or go out and get one of those guys or nothing, but there are a lot of guys out there. Defensively, I don't know if there's anybody I'm proud of. I don't know if I talked about it with you. I think Romeo Okwara is a nice piece, but he's not somebody you talk about when you're talking about building blocks. Honestly, expectations for defense, bottom 5, bottom 10. I'd say bottom 10 is the goal. Be like 22nd. But I believe Matt Stafford, plus a good offensive line, plus a good enough running game. The question is, can you go out and get a wide receiver who's Kenny Galladay-esque? And if so, I believe the offense could be good enough to be a 500 football team. I also think Quintez Cephas has showed some flashes is a strong word, but he gives some Anquan Bolden vibes.
So he's a guy that when they drafted him, I was a little bit excited because I watched a couple of his games when he was in college, and I liked a lot of things that he did. He's a good route runner. He's got strong hands. He's not a guy who's going to take the top off the defense, but he is a good slot receiver. He's a guy who catches a lot of balls, and he can get a little bit of separation. I like Quintez Cephas. I think he needs to play a little bit more of a prominent role going down the stretch here, so you can really see what you have with him.
I will say, I'm really curious to see how Jeff Okudah looks next year because he looked a lot better as the season went on. And I know he was tabbed as a can't-miss cornerback. And the truth is, when you're taken at the very top of the draft, corners are usually relatively safe. By the way, we're forgetting one major piece on offense. This is my fault. TJ Hawkinson looks like a top 10 tight end. Yeah. Looks like is the wrong way to put it. TJ Hawkinson is today, right here, right now, a top 10 tight end, and he might be beher than that.
Yeah, I agree with you.
If you get a number one wide receiver, whether that's Galladay for 16 games or somebody else, I think this offense could be really damn good.
I see the offense isn't really the issue for me, right? No, I like the offense. I think the offense is the offense. Again, this goes back to our original conversation we had, 13, 14 weeks ago, where we're closer to with the offense than we are with the defense. The defense now miles apart from where we originally thought they were. And the defense, you don't have a lot to build with. You don't have a lot to work with. I like Romeo Okwara as well. I'm interested to see what Julian Okwara gives you. And then after that, look, you brought up Okudah, and I was going to stay away from Okudah because we all know how I feel about this guy. He better show up next year.
Yeah, but you can't separate him from not being Tua. You hold not being Tua against him.
Yes, I do.
That's not fair when judging how good of a player he is.
But I don't think, you said he got better as the season went on. And yeah, I guess in some respects he did.
He had a stretch of 4 or 5 weeks where he was the number one ranked rookie by PFF.
Yeah, I don't know, man. There are times where I watch games and he sometimes looks like he's on ice skates.
He's your number one cornerback. That's why.
I know, but that's so frustrating, man. I don't know. The way the defense is constructed is just not great.
Pro Football Focus would say, I think Jeff Okudah has had a better season than Darius Slay's rookie year.
Ooh, I would be interested. To see how that kind of works out.
I understand how it's hard to watch what happened this week and listen to what I'm saying by telling you that the Lions should be playoff contenders next year. But Stroz, how good was the Lions defense in 2011? It was terrible. It had a moment where it fooled us into thinking they were good when we rewatched them.
Yeah,
they were not good.
They were not good.
2014 they were great, but was it 2015 they made it at 7-9 or 9? They didn't make it 7-9, 9-7.
9-7.
That defense was okay, but it wasn't anything special. Sometimes we get fooled into thinking playoff teams are complete. Super Bowl contenders are complete.
Are closer to being complete. Yeah.
If you are a playoff team, sometimes just being really good on one side of the ball is enough. And I'm not even telling you they will make it. I'm telling you, if you sit here today thinking the Lions are at least 2 to 3 years away from being fun again, that's not the way football works. The offense is good enough that they can be fun next year.
What'll interest me is when we rewatch the 2014 season, because that defense was pretty good. That 2014 season defense was pretty good. It'll be interesting to me for our reactions to that season, where they had what seemed like a pretty complete offense, and they had a much better defense.
I believe it is the worst year of Stafford's career.
Is it?
So what had happened is his first year as the coach of the Lions, he kind of put like these, I don't know what the word to use is. He kind of slowed down Matthew Stafford. He stopped him from being who he was, and he kind of let him be a little bit more of himself as they got deeper into his tenure with the Lions. And again, Caldwell has talked about that, and you see that. He dramatically brought down his interceptions, which was needed, but he just wasn't the playmaker he's been at other points in his career. And I think it is fair to say, when people complain about Stafford never winning a playoff game, I think 2011, it is an absolute disaster. If you argue that, I don't respect your opinion. It doesn't mean I don't respect you and other opinions, but you don't know what you're talking about when you blame Matthew Stafford for the loss to the Saints. If you blame him in 2015 or whatever year that was to the Seahawks, he wasn't great in that one, but they didn't have a running game. They didn't have an offensive line. They didn't have a defense. There's a lot wrong there. They were dramatic underdogs in both of those games. Versus Dallas, he did some things right, but that team shouldn't have even played in week one. And he was he was not good enough that season. 2014 is the one season I will allow criticism of Stafford for not having a better season. Every other year in his career, I genuinely don't believe it is fair to criticize him for the Lions' lack of a playoff game or playoff win.
So looking at the stats real quick, 2018 was his worst season. Yards were so low. Interceptions, the touchdown to interception ratio was a little bit high. His passer rating wasn't great. I don't really believe in passer rating as necessarily a good stat to gauge your quarterback. But 2018 was poor, and then 2014, you could see that there was some pump in the brakes with him. And then as the tenure with Caldwell got going, you could see that they took some of the restrictions off of him, and they really let him start to kind of fly, especially 2015. 2017 looked like it was a pretty decent season as well. So interesting. Look, I don't know if I get what you're saying, that you feel that this team next year should be in a spot where they should be playing some meaningful football games in December, and we could possibly have a team that can challenge for a playoff spot. I see total rebuild. I think a lot's going to hinge on what goes on with Matt Stafford with this new general manager.
Even if they go rookie quarterback, I think it's with the thought of you spend that money to win now. The one scenario where that's not the case is the transitional quarterback. And man, I just can't see that being the route they go.
I don't think they go transitional quarterback either. I think it'll be one of those things where you trade Stafford, you suck for a year, get your guy, and then you move on.
Well, if you trade Stafford and don't draft a quarterback, you are going transitional. You're going Jameis Winston. You're going.
Well, I think you would go. I think you'd stick with Chase. I think you'd end up sticking with Chase Daniels because you're already paying him. No, you don't think so?
They are not going into the season with Chase Daniel quarterback. They won't sell tickets.
You didn't go get Ryan Fitzpatrick?
I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is a possible option.
I mean, I think so too, but I don't know if they do that. It'll be interesting.
Maybe you're the one who finally pays Taysom Hill. I just don't believe that they're going to go into a season with Chase Daniel quarterback. I don't believe, because that is telling your fans we have no intentions of winning any games this year, and I don't believe the Lions will
How
ever.
Great would that be? You would have two New Orleans Saints quarterbacks on your team, but you would not have the New Orleans Saints quarterback that you really wanted in Drew Brees. You would have Taysom Hill and you would have Chase Daniels. Both those guys backed up Drew Brees.
Trying to steal something. Maybe we can bring back Joe Lombardi.
Please no. You know what? It'll be interesting to see who they end up going with as far as their general manager. I wanted to kind of pick your brain on this real quick, and I don't know if you've seen this or if you heard this. So there was an internal memo that was released, and the Free Press got a hold of it, and they basically talked about it a little bit. One of the articles by Dave Burkett, and in it basically made mentions to wanting to get this GM and coach search done in the next 6 weeks, which I feel like is an accelerated timeline. It makes sense because it's going to put you right after the Super Bowl. But it also talked about... It's
a good timeline for a GM. It seems a little accelerated for a coach.
For a coach, right? Exactly.
Because I'm fairly certain you could steal a GM off of someone's staff while they're in the playoff hunt. A coach is a little harder to do that.
Mm-hmm. But it also talks about wanting them to have experience. And if you see the names that have kind of come out recently, Dimitrov, Pioli, Louis Riddick was a front office guy, doesn't have experience as a GM.
I had a
Rick Smith
about this with some friends literally earlier today. I don't love a coach with experience. I think if you are a really good coach, it's going to show on the football field more often than not. I think it is very hard for you to be a great coach and have a terrible team. Like Jim Caldwell's a good example. I think Jim Caldwell is very clearly an NFL caliber coach. That doesn't mean he's a great coach, but I think we know Jim Caldwell doesn't suck. However, with GM, I don't know that it's that simple. I look at a guy like Martin Mayhew, who put some pretty damn good teams on the field, but didn't get enough success. And I say, maybe he never had the right coach there. And he goes and has success in San Francisco. I look at Dimitroff, who built a team that went to the Super Bowl in Atlanta. And I say they got really damn close, and they got the coaching hire wrong. Shanahan was the coach on that staff that mattered. And so I actually really like the idea of a GM with experience. I honestly do. And I like the list. I like Dimitroff. I like Rick Smith. I don't love Louis Riddick because he doesn't have, he's a TV guy. Mm-hmm. But that being said, I want to make this clear. I will not celebrate or hate a GM hire because John Lynch had zero experience and has built the 49ers. And I just don't think we know nearly as much about GMs as we do coaches. Now, coaches, if you hire a coach who comes in and tells me he wants to run the football, he wants to build this team on the ground, I don't need to know anything else. I don't like him. I will celebrate or hate a coaching hire. Maybe. It depends on who it is, but it's possible. I will not celebrate or hate a GM hire.
I think we're kind of in lockstep there. I like the list. I like Pioli, or not Pioli. I like Dimitroff. Pioli was with the Chiefs, was with the Falcons, and with there's one more team he was with. I want to say
I'm not as familiar with him.
Yeah. Oh, he was with the Patriots too. He's another Patriots guy.
Built the Falcons who went to the Super
Falcons. Bowl. Yes. I like Dimitroff a lot. I've always liked Dimitroff.
Rick Smith. I know they like him here. Mm-hmm. He wasn't great after the first round, but he was incredible in the first round. So Rick Smith's interesting to me. I don't know Pioli's track record.
Yeah, Pioli has some success, but I don't think I was surprised that they even added him to their list. It was kind of weird to me. I guess maybe he's just a guy. I do
like they're out here interviewing like a bunch of guys already. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I like it too. It's going to be interesting to kind of see how that shapes up and who they end up going with, because I think that's going to tell you a little bit about who might be the next head coach. And I think we can have some interesting conversations there because, again, we know more about the head coaches than we do about the GMs.
All right, I think that's going to do it. I'd be curious to know next week where we are on the GM search because all these big names coming in, if they want to excel, if they want to have both hired in the next 6 weeks, I bet you we have a GM in the next 2. Give them a month to find a coach.
That seems really quick.
I don't know. I'm very curious, and it is fun starting to get these names out there. That's why it's nice to have Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia fired in season. Sometimes you wonder why it matters. This is why. We can enjoy the GM search while this season continues to go on, even though we hardly realize it.
It's like the one thing that you have to kind of hold on to here with the season.
Make sure you follow me on TikTok at @BrendanRiley_. Watch every video start to finish. If you wouldn't mind, just leave it on for an hour and a half, because every time it scrolls through, it gives me credit. That's the important takeaway from this episode.